Welcome to a training video of the work log screen in PayPak Professional 4.0. This screen is used to track employee work hours. It's a feature dating back to the very first version of PayPak Professional when manual time cards were widely used before electronic and biometric time clocks became popular. This screen, along with the associated time cards screen, is useful for anyone without an electronic time clock who needs to calculate hours and minutes from times when employees started and finished work. Work log entries are intended for purposes of record keeping and reporting. The totals from work log reports can be manually entered into payroll batches. There is presently no option to import work log entries directly into payroll batches, but you can use the reports to manually create data files which can be imported into the Import Gross Pay screen. The time cards screen allows up to 5 weeks of work log entries at a time to be entered for a single employee. So let's log in and show you how it works. The work log is found under the Transactions section of the menu, far to the end, right beside the Time Cards button. So we click on Work Log, and here is the screen. Let's start with a look at the layout of the screen, and then I will show you how it works. We have the ID, which is an automatically generated number. You would not enter that to add a new entry. You would use it if you are displaying an existing entry. We have the date, which is automatically assigned, and it says the 4th of June 2021, that being today's date. We have the type. The type is automatically assigned as well. Any entries for the work log, any work log entries which are saved from this screen or from the time card screen, they are assigned manual as their type. Where that type might be different would be a case where we may have a customized piece of software which exports entries to the work log, and once imported, the type may indicate the source of those entries. Under that, we have the employee, which is the first place you start when you're doing a new entry, and you can enter the employee's name either in part or in full, or the employee's ID number that would display the name and the employee ID. Under that, we have the date and time started. Under that, the date and time finished, with an option to override the date in cases where a person may have worked past midnight. They started maybe in the afternoon or the evening and they worked past midnight, and you need to change the day maybe from the 4th to the 5th. To the right of that, we have the hours and minutes, which is a total of the time that elapsed between when they started and when they finished. Under that, we have a reference where you can type a note. That's an optional field. At the bottom of the screen, there's a variety of buttons which control various functions for this screen. So let's begin by typing an entry. Let's type in, let's see if we find someone matching ER in their name. We have a list, 21 matching items. Let's go with April Richardson, the first in the list. And the next thing you enter will be the date for the entry. It defaults to the current date, but in this case, I'm going to change it to the start of the week because I'm going to be entering entries for the week. And we'll begin with Monday, the 31st of May. Next, the time. Let's say she started work at 8:30. I can type that in like this, 8:30 a.m. Or I can double click to call up the time entry dialog, which is divided into 3 segments. There's a part for the hour, so I'll scroll back to 8. I can scroll up or down. 8:30 and it's a.m. and I say okay. So she started at 8:30. Let's say she finished at 5:15. So I double click, scroll down to 5, scroll to my 15, it's PM, and I say okay. So that is now 8 hours and 45 minutes reflected in the totals here. The note is optional. I'm not going to add, the reference is optional. I'm not going to add a reference in this case. And I just click on save to save the entry, and there you go, it's saved. Now if I click on last, I can display that entry. It's entry number 17, the 4th of June, manual. It's for April Richardson. It's for the 31st of May. It shows she started at 8:30 a.m. and she finished at 5:15 p.m. A total of 8 hours and 45 minutes. Now if I'd wanted to make a change to that, let's say it wasn't 5:15, it was 5:17, I could just edit that. The minutes changes from 45 to 47. I click on save and update, and that record is now updated. Now let's have a look at this time in a little greater detail. You've got 8 hours and 47 minutes. Now this could be okay for some customers. It may not be okay for others, and I'll explain why. Let's say that April worked 5 days for that week, Monday to Friday, but she is given a lunch hour, and she is granted 1 hour's lunch. Now, there are some companies where you may deduct an hour for lunch, regardless of how long the person was away. So, at the end of the week, when these hours are totaled up, if you were entering this into the PayPak, you want to key it into a batch, you would have to first of all print the work log report, one of the work log reports for that time period for that week. You would get a total, which would be in hours and minutes. If it was just 8 hours alone, it's 8 5s is 40 hours. So let's say it was 50 hours or something of that sort that everything came up to. 50 hours and a few minutes in total for the 5 days. If that was the total for her, and she took lunch 5 days, 1 hour each of the 5 days, from that total of, let's say, 55 hours, you would have to subtract 5 hours for lunch. Now, for some customers, that may not be a big problem, because you may have just a few employees that you're doing this for. You allow hours lunch, you're flexible about it. If the person comes back a little later, maybe if they and you don't have cases where people work through their lunch, or they may come back in early. So if you always allow an hour for lunch and it's always taken, and you know that that's the case, then you can print the report and subtract 1 hour's lunch for each day. The problem that you may have with that is, what if the person took longer for lunch? If they went to lunch for an hour and a half, and you only deduct an hour for lunch, then you're paying them for a half hour which they did not work. Likewise, if they came back in early, they came back in 15 minutes early, and you deduct an hour, then you are not paying them for 15 minutes So it could be a problem either way. Another scenario is the person worked through their lunch hour. They did not take lunch, so you don't have any right to deduct an hour for lunch if they did not take lunch. Another scenario is that they started at 8:30 and they took lunch. Let's say they normally finish at 5. They started at 8:30 and they closed off at 4. They took lunch at 4 and did not come back into work. So in that case, you would have had 8:30 to 4, and it would only capture the time between 8:30 and 4, which is 7 hours and 30 minutes. But if you deduct an hour for lunch from that, you are robbing your employee of an hour's work. So you may also have a case where the person worked morning and did not come back. They felt sick. They worked from 8 to, let's say, 12:30 or 12:15, and they left for the day, or they had an afternoon appointment. They had to go to a funeral, so they only worked the morning period. If you take that day's total and you subtract an hour for lunch, again, you are shortchanging your employee. It can also be the other way around, that they did not work the morning, but they came in from 1 p.m. in the afternoon and they worked till 6 maybe, and that's 5 hours work. They did not take a lunch hour because they came in the afternoon, so you don't have any right to deduct an hours for lunch for them. Now, in cases such as that, what you may want to do is split this entry into 2. And I'm going to do an entry for the next day for the same April Richardson to show you how you would make an entry from when she started to when she went to lunch, and then a second entry from where she returned from lunch to where she finished work. So let's click on New, April, there's it. Let's pick the day, which will be the 1st of June. And she started, let's say she started at 8:37 a.m. 8:37 a.m. and she took lunch at, so she took lunch at 11:45. So she took lunch at 11:45. 11 down, here's my 45, and that's the a.m. Okay, fine. So she took lunch at 11:45, which is a total of 3 hours and 8 minutes. We'll save that. And then she came back in the afternoon. This is the second entry for that day now. The second. And let's say, now she took lunch at 11:45, so she's really due back at 12:45. But let's say she came back 5 minutes late and she came back in at 12:50 p.m. That's when she came back. And she finished that day at 5:02 p.m. So we got our 5, we've got our 02, and we got our p.m. and we save that. So that's 4 hours and 12 minutes for the afternoon session. So there's the afternoon session and there's the morning session. Now, if I browse like this and look at the entries, we can see them listed here. These are entries from previous periods. These are the entries I made in this session. So here's entry number 17. This is the one for the 31st of May, where she started at 8:30 and she finished at 5:17. That's a total of 8 hours and 47 minutes. Then we have the entry for the morning of the 1st of June. Started at 8:37, finished at 11:45, and that's 3 hours and 48 minutes. I made an error in entering this one. it was entered as the 2nd of June instead of the 1st of June, but this is the afternoon session for the 2nd of June. We will correct that. So that's from 12:50 p.m. to 5:02 p.m. and that's 4 hours and 12 minutes. Correction is easy, just display the entry. I'll close this. I double click, so I called it entry number 19, and all I have to do is set the date to the right date. 1st of June, 4 hours 12 minutes, and save it and update it, and there you go. So that's how this screen works. Let's say we had someone who came in. Let's do an entry for someone who came in. Let's find someone. Let's say Christian Boyer. Let's say that Christian Boyer on the 2nd started work at 8:30 a.m. and finished at 12:35 p.m., which is 4 hours and 5 minutes, but left that day not feeling well. So you can put left early, not feeling well. Okay, and that's how you would use the reference in that case. This is for a person who worked just the first half of the morning. Also on the 2nd, let's say you had to call in someone to fill in for that person. Let's pick Emory Session, and they started at 2 p.m. and they finished at 4:30 p.m. Right, so they started at 2:30 p.m. started at 2 p.m. finished at 4:30. That's a total of 2 hours and 30 minutes, and you could say filling in for that previous person. So they work the afternoon. That's just your note. Okay. So if we browse here and again look at the entries, we will see the entry for Christian Boyer, and you'll see the entry for Emory Session. I can actually edit that and say filling in for Christian Boyer. Just resize the browse a bit so that we can more easily view it. Filling in for Christian. Okay. Christian. So filling in for Christian, and we save that, and the entry is updated. These buttons are navigational. I can click last to see the last one. I can go previous to see the ones before and loop through them. I can go first to see the very first entry. Next takes you forward. And the delete button will delete the displayed entry. Let's say we have some people who are working. You may have a case of some employees who are working to unstuff containers outside of normal working hours. So let's show you an entry for that. Let's go with Mark Taylor. So I type in Mark. Is today's date. Well, let's use yesterday's date. And let's say he started at 6:45, but they finished after midnight. What you would do there, you tick this, you change the date to the 4th, and let's say they finished at 1:45 a.m. I put 1:45 a.m. and that's 7 hours exactly. So let's just make this 47, add a couple of minutes on there. So that's 7 hours and 2 minutes, and you can put your note in here on stuffing containers, and we save that. That entry now is in the log. There you go. It's right there. Let's just bring this across. Let's maximize it so you can see it. Right. So that's the entries that we've done. In this session, we have done 6 entries. Okay, we've done some for the whole day. We've done some for the morning and afternoon session. We've done some for morning session only and afternoon session only. And we've done one for that crosses from one day over to another in the case of unstuffing the containers. There are two reports which you can use to see that information, and I will show you that now. Let's go to Reports, Standard Reports, and we're going to click on W. You have the work log detail. I'll just print all of that and preview it. This is the work log detail report, and you can see the entries at the bottom here that were done on the 4th of June up to the one with unstuffing the containers. So for each entry you've got the entry number, the date of the entry, the type of entry, employee ID, employee name, the date and time started, date and time finished, the number of hours and minutes which elapsed, and the reference. And at the bottom there's an overall total in hours and minutes for the selected entries. And you can filter this report to maybe print for only a particular person or a particular date range. So that's the first report. The next report is the work log by employee. Again, I'm going to preview that, and this is grouped by employee. And here we have April Richardson. There's her entry. The 3 entries that were done for her. This is the one for the 31st of May, 8 hours and 47 minutes. These are the 2 for the 1st of June, 3 hours and 8 minutes and 4 hours and 12 minutes. Total for her for the week thus far is 16 hours and 7 minutes. So you can use this report to get your totals for each employee, and you could key this into PayPak in a batch, or you could create an import file, maybe an Excel format or whatever, and key the hours in, either individual days or the totals for each person. And then you can import those hours using the import gross pay screen. So those are your 2 reports. Let's close this. In the browse, just finally, I just show you, you can search for entries for April. So if I press enter, it gives me all the entries. There are 22. But if I type April and I press enter, I will see only the entries for her, and that can be exported to Excel. I can sort it any way I want or filter it. I can sort entries for a particular day if I so desired. Okay, so that's the reports and the browse. We went through the buttons here. We've looked at the delete button, the video button. If you click on it, that will launch your browser and show you this same very video which you're now viewing. And the exit button, which brings this training video to a close. As always, it's been a pleasure to present the videos to you, and do look out for the next training video. Thank you and goodbye.